Friends of the Pecos River, I started as a result of well, first of all, I participated starting in 2008 with the watershed protection plan that the government was doing. And as a landowner in Ira Yates, I attended those meetings. And out of that became a report, 2012, and it was a watershed protection plan. And it's been updated 2 or 3 times since then. The conclusions of that plan is that we need more citizen participation and we need more data. The watershed is huge, 926 miles of watershed, of river, and the watershed is so huge. The plan says essentially it's too big for us to even conceive of any solutions to the problems with the Pecos River. The problems with the Pecos River started with the irrigation in the late 1800s, taking fresh water out of the river up there. That practice moved downstream into Texas in the early 1900s. We know that all of this region is a seabed. The Pecos River has always run across the seabed. It's always been salty. Some newcomers might say, oh, the oil industry did this or oil industry did that. I have no real evidence that much of the Pecos River problems have anything to do with oil production. I'm here to be corrected if anybody knows. I need to always learn. So the real problem is a lack of fresh water in the Pecos River. And the fact that it's been taken out, and so the concentration of the salt's gone way up. Lake Amistad is on the brink of reaching the level of salinity that's beyond drinking water standards. That's international boundaries waters. That brings me back to the Friends of the Pecos and what I'm trying to do. In 2000, well, during the period of the watershed protection planning process, I decided, because of my work in Central Texas, and by the way, the water that enters my in the creek of my ranch in Austin in the fault, when it disappears from my creek, it comes out at Barton Springs within 96 hours. That's 8 miles that water travels in less than 3 days. So I'm familiar with movement and the water cycle. I grew up on the ranch where I could see the water go in the ground. 300 yards off to the perpendicular was a cave that was probably 12 feet opening. 25 feet down was cascading water, obviously coming from the creek. 300 yards away was a windmill where the water came back out for the animals. That's our water cycle. I've lived it all my life. That's why I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. So in the early 2010s, because of my relationship in Central Texas, at Texas State, the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment, they have a program called Stream Team Testing. That's where they take citizen scientists, but primarily students, and they teach them how to test water. And it's a learning process. It's not necessarily something where you're trying to save that stream or that piece of water. It's an educational process, and I thought that would be really important. We've heard today, and by the way, that was a successful program. They got an award from the International Boundary Waters Group, but because of circumstances within the school district, which everybody knows about rural America out here and the difficulties we have in our school districts, just even trying to maintain our teachers. In any case, I introduced this program to them and they won the award, but through circumstances, that program fell off for a while. I decided in 2020 to revive that with my work with Friends of the Pecos. I had a change in my life where I could spend more time doing this. And we have started that program back up. But Friends of the Pecos, December of 2020 was the start of the COVID situation, so we're still trying to get our feet as an organization on the ground. I'm a little jealous today because I heard somebody won a BOR, Bureau of Reclamation grant. We applied very late, but I drove to Denver personally to file it on the day that it was due. We did not receive that grant. We're still hoping to get a grant to help us establish ourselves on the ground. That's our current status. The report, this book, there's a quote on one of those boards back there out of the book that says the only thing that's going to help the Pecos River dealing with salinity is fresh water. And I think I'm in a group of people that understand what the history of West Texas is. We're proud of our history, but we hurt the land in the 1800s and early 1900s. And we need to reestablish some of that grass and some of that turf out there. We call it rangeland restoration. And it's going to take a long time for that particular restoration to occur. I mean, that's hundreds of years probably to put the kind of vegetation on the ground that was here before it was grazed down and lost. The piece of property, I have an undivided interest in what's known as the Yates Ranch there in Ira. And my mother built a little adobe house on the ridge. You look down from that ridge, you can probably see 5 miles of the Pecos River. You can't see it from town, but it's a beautiful picture. And as I stand up there and know what I know about the Pecos River, I dream of fresh water, rangeland restoration. But a few years ago, living in Grand Junction, I picked up a paper and it talked about the Paradox reinjection well that was dealing with salinity issues just like we do. They're up on the other Colorado River, and they were trying to figure out how to solve their disposal well had run its course. End of the story mostly is that I ended up getting the executive report on that well, and the last solution to the problem, replace the well, don't do anything, and down here was purification. And of course I went, well, why wouldn't you purify that water? I mean, you're going to deal with it, why not do that? It was the energy cost and labor was what was identified as a reason not to purify that water. Well, being from this region, we got a lot of energy and we know how to move water, labor force. It just seemed like a no-brainer to me to start exploring on my own what the potential was with this produced water. And I didn't know I was talking about produced water. At the time, I was thinking about literally taking the small stream, most of the time, of what reaches Ira, putting it through some process and putting it back in the river. But then I realized and learned about produced water and started reading up on that. 4 billion barrels of produced water from the Permian each year has to be dealt with. It's supposed to go to 8 billion. We all in this room know oil's not going away. We just agree to that, I think. It's not going to go away anytime soon. So we're going to have to deal with that. I thought, well, why not take a nuisance and clean it up? So I joined the Produced Water Society for 2 years now, observed everything that went on, and there are people in this room that speak better about where the status of that industry is than I can. But I can tell you, because of regulatory issues, private property rights issue, who owns the water issue when it comes out of the ground, all of those and eminent domain issues in order to get the water where you need to get it, in order to treat it. Those are huge issues that are going to be hard to overcome in the length of time that we're being told we have to turn things around. I've often thought, erroneously apparently, that a new administration, such as we might have had, we do have, could have thrown a bone to the industry, say, hey, if you do better, we'll give you some money to help you do better. I think we should have a project similar to the moon mission back in the 60s, having to do with water. I mean, the whole earth, if you look at the water availability, in scarlet, red is the image of lack of water. The whole world's red. You all here in this basin have the ability for yourselves to overcome some of that with the wastewater, so to speak, produced water that you have. I say my title here is beyond that. After oil and gas, whenever that happens here, I have now learned, I've been wanting to have an education on what the other aquifers were out here. Greg knocked me a few minutes ago and said, is any of this beneficial? I learned something today about the aquifers. I would have had to do a lot of research on my own to learn what I learned today. But I've been thinking that there's a tremendous amount of groundwater out here that's not deep water, that is not potable. Point is, you got to have a feed source for the kind of industry I'm talking about. I'm talking about, it would be similar to a gas electric generation plant. $1 billion. You got to amortize that over 30 years. You got to have enough feedstock. The Permian and Delaware are one of only 3 sources in the United States where this could be done. I can't even mention what the other 2 are because the Delaware and Permian are the big one. So I see a long-term potential for use of produced water with the caveat, and you'll see it in everything I write, it's got to be pure and it can't have any contaminants because I come from an environmental and agricultural background. I'm as scared about what we don't see in the water that we could jeopardize some of our other water resources if we try to re-inject it or put it in the river. I would like to see clean water in the river to help the river itself. And Friends of the Pecos is an educational organization, but my passion is I see this big opportunity, and that's beyond Friends of the Pecos. But that's why I talk about looking beyond today. Getting buy-in, when you say you have a problem getting data, you only got 2 wells and all this, point is you can't get access. And we dealt with that in Central Texas for a very long time. And that's what we have to have. I am trying with Friends of the Pecos to use it as a way to get trust within the community. Oh, Ira, you're from Austin with these crazy ideas. You're from the government. You can't even, I don't want to talk to you. We have to overcome that situation. And by helping the community, doing good work, I hope to be able to create that trust over time so that we can test water on the Pecos. Lack of data to know what's really going on, and then citizen communication are the 2 obstacles that are mentioned in that book and every report that's been done on the Pecos River in terms of trying to do better. I think I've covered most of the ideas I wanted to speak to you about. There's so many rabbit holes I could go down and explain, but if anybody has any questions of me, I'd be happy to take them. I just see so much potential here, but the obstacles, governmental and private property right attitudes, are things that are going to really have to be overcome. I'm certainly glad for the science that's been expressed in this room, but our challenge is much more than science. Our challenge are social issues that we need to deal with and cooperate with and try to explain that these things, we don't have time. We don't have 10 years. We need to do it now because it takes 10 years to get this stuff on the ground. My concern is it's going to take 20 years just to get through the BS of the legal system and the property rights issue and all that stuff that gets in the way of actually doing the work. So I think it's as much of a social issue, and so that's, again, I come back to the Pecos, Friends of the Pecos. If we can show the community that there's some good out there to be done, I think that's a path forward.